Hey, Josh, thanks so much for joining me today.
Hey, Jeremy, thanks so much for having me back, mate. It's great to see you and great to be back after a little bit of time.
Oh, I'm pumped for our conversation.
Yeah, me too, man.
Hey, you spent 20 plus years in telecom and IT and across the world. What's some of the biggest mistakes that you see companies are making when it comes to managing their tech spend?
That's such a great question. And I've worked in multifacets of the tech industry over that 20 plus year career. And I think probably the number one mistake is businesses have multiple stakeholders, and some of those are in sales and they've got their own intentions and purposes for why they want IT or technology stacks inside the business. I think if you were to answer the question holistically, most businesses don't take a step back and say, what happens after this? It's very short sighted. So they make the decision for a need that they have now, but they're not looking at the holistic picture where they can build technology off of the decision that they're making. So they make a short term decision that really impacts them in the long term, always negatively, unfortunately. So you're bringing in key pieces of the business from everywhere. And this happens more broadly, I'd say, in Fortune 500 companies where we worked pretty specifically for a lot of my career, is that disconnected leadership and roles within the organization. So while this particular part of the business is procuring all of this IT stack, another part of the business will be procuring a different IT stack. None of those will ever actually talk to each other. They won't be able to be used by the different departments, across departments. So realistically, you have all these little siloed pieces of the business all over the place, and it becomes very complex very quickly. And that's where Procure IT comes in and provides radical visibility into these organizations. It's very, very simple in the process. So we can provide visibility, vendor insights, bringing all of the technology stacks into one visible view, so we can actually provide this to the executive level teams in a huddle and make real strategic decisions as a business on our way forward. You always have to cut some losses there, and that's the unfortunate piece. You have to fall on the sword and go, we made some bad decisions, but how do we right size this going forward? Because let's face it, Jeremy, if you don't jump on it now, this thing keeps building and building and building. And I think one of the most interesting things that come out of our free proof of concept that we do for businesses, when we show them, say $1.6 million of savings annually, they go, how did we get here? How did you find $1.6 million? That wouldn't have come in one bill. And it's like, you're absolutely correct. The $1.6 million didn't happen overnight. That happened incrementally over time as different departments brought in different IT stacks with no real way to reconcile what they're actually using, what they're needing those products for, and creating synergy across that stack. So yes, we'll find that 1.6. It shocks people, it infuriates CFOs, but they'll continue to make the same decisions until they have platforms like a Procure IT managed intelligence platform that gives them visibility, insights. And it's really, we provide information, right? There's a lot of platforms out there that provide really good information. Okay, I've got the information, it's out of cold storage, it's all here in front of me. One thing you've got to do is actually read through all that and unpick it all. What our product actually does is utilize AI, and it pulls out all of the key points that are problem sets that need to be discussed and decisions need to be made about. So we're bringing the visibility, but we're also bringing the intelligence that goes with it. There's no thinking that has to happen. Our platform will do that for you. Really what it comes down to is, what's the best decision for us as a business moving forward? And that's where the people part of our business comes in. We've got, myself that's had over 20 years. We've got a team of 35 staff that we've probably got hundreds of years of experience be able to come in and provide insights, because we do this every single day with businesses, Fortune 500 companies, all the way down to, small, medium businesses. So different problem sets, obviously. Larger businesses, very siloed. Smaller businesses, small, medium business, you've got IT managers that don't have the time in the day to be able to reconcile, accounting teams that don't have the time in the day to reconcile, and a CFO that's very demanding on, I need visibility, I need to be able to make decisions, I need to know where the budget's at and why it's blown out. So we've never walked into a business and they've said, oh yeah, we're completely under budget for IT, everything is smooth sailing. Never.
I believe it. And awesome to provide that visibility to solve that. Now, Procure IT's go to market is positioned around managed intelligence. Can you tell me about what does managed intelligence mean for a business that's drowning in SaaS subscriptions and cloud bills?
Yeah. Well, look, I think most organizations will have some kind of assumption that they have control over their technology spend, but the reality is they're completely flying blind. So what we've done is built an engine, and we've been very fortunate to build off the back of a really robust platform that our team had built in early 2015, and we've been able to really just send it to the moon, if you will, as far as the capability of what we can actually consume and the insights that we can provide into organizations. So what Procure IT does when you talk about managed intelligence, take a step back for a second, right? Talk about contracts. Businesses that we typically go into will say, hey, Josh, yes, we've got ServiceNow that manages all of our contracts. And I said, okay, that's a great response. How does ServiceNow manage your contracts for you? So you've got the management, you're putting them in a single place, which is a great starting point. And hats off to you, because we see a lot of companies that don't have that. They might be on spreadsheets, or they might be in SharePoint all over the place. If they've got it in somewhere like ServiceNow, that's great. But what intelligence are you pulling out of those contracts? Because ServiceNow or any other platform that you're securely storing your contracts is basically cold storage. So unless you're relying on your memory, or if you put in a calendar reminder for yourself that that contract's going to come up in 2 years, there's no visibility into that contract. What our platform does at a very starting point, and this is where we always start with customers, is let's ingest all of your vendor contracts and provide some insights around that. Our platform will integrate directly with any of the cold storage platforms where people are dumping their contracts into, and make them intelligent. So effectively, you're bringing that contract alive. We're ingesting the contract. We're putting it into, just imagine a Gantt chart style live document that shows you exactly when you need to renegotiate that contract, any anomalies like evergreen clauses that were put in there where that contract is going to auto renew. We're pulling all of those types of insights. The other thing our platform is doing is pulling insights around the vendors that they're contracted to, which is a really interesting piece about what we do. Because not only are we pulling insights around those businesses, what's their share price doing? Have they had a cyber breach? Those types of things. We're also bringing in benchmarking as far as pricing, just as a baseline. So when we load in all the contracts, we understand who your vendors are. We've provided analysis on that, but also with benchmark pricing. So the contract that you may have signed into may not be the best contract that you could have negotiated out in that market. And our contract tool will actually color flag that to say, hey, yep, we're locked into a contract with these guys. It's unfortunate. But as we come to this date here, we know the vendors that are on our pipeline that we're going to go and create relationships with to get better pricing, better service, those types of things. So we start at the contract piece, and really that leads us into all the other layers of what we do around SaaS, around cloud, around TEM, which is our fixed services and mobile services. That's obviously a big piece, for us. And we just take the customers on the journey. Once we've done the contracts and they've really seen the insights of who they've signed into contracts for, the pricing that they've got, then we can start to uncover things like SaaS. When I talk SaaS, duplication of SaaS tools is one of the number one pieces. Perfect example, we had a now customer, did a proof of concept for last year that said that their SaaS budget was $14,000 a month. Great. That's wonderful. And I'm thinking, how many employees do you have? Because those numbers don't seem to align, but they were very confident that their SaaS licenses were aligned to the employee stack that they had. We provided a simple analysis very quickly. This was within 10 days of the discussion starting point, and we found that $8,400 of those a month worth of licenses were unused and unbeknownst to the customer. And when we actually researched back, this had been an issue for almost 2 years. So you've got to think this is a business that's paid, $8,400 a month for licenses that are just sitting there for people that aren't using them. Our software is going to provide insights as high level as you want, as far as, hey, these are the licenses that are in use. These are the people that are using them. How can we validate that? Well, we can show you exactly when they used it last, the amount that they use it per month, how many times that they've logged into that service, things like duration of a Teams call. How many Teams calls have you had this month? Great for a sales leader also. But because as a sales leader myself in periods of time, I'm going, well, why does Marty have only 3 meetings this month when we've got 20 good selling days? It gets really interesting. A data can pull some really incredible things that the business, might not identify initially as bringing value, but all departments can utilize our tool to better serve not only their customer base, but also them as a business. So, and as I said, cloud wastage. Cloud is still this big, beautiful unknown that people think that they've scoped correctly or they've relied on their MSP to scope correctly. I can tell you 99.99% of the time, I'd say 100, but somebody will pull me up on something. But 99.995% of the time is that we just go into the cloud storage monitor and we just click wastage and it pulls straight up and we see this big, beautiful savings number and the customer goes, oh my gosh, that can't be real. Unfortunately, it is, but we can stop the bleeding now and move forward as a business in a much better way.
It's phenomenal. Just amazing the outcomes that you're producing. I would imagine with many companies and leadership teams, they simply have no idea how much they're wasting on unused licenses or consumption or storage. Can you give me some examples of numbers that you're typically finding when you open up and start really pulling this apart for businesses that you work with?
Look, the interesting part about what you said was when we really start pulling apart what's behind the mechanics, I think that when we initially engage and we do a proof of concept, which effectively is a 40,000 foot view, we're not digging into anything. We're going against basic contracts across licenses, across human resources data, and across your contracts, right? And so as we start to do that, we find 15 to 30% savings automatically. We know any customer that we talk to and we engage with a proof of concept, at a minimum, they're going to save 15% on what they're currently spending today. Mm-hmm. So for any CFOs out there, IT managers out there that are doing quick numbers on their budgets and things like that, think about the fact that 15% of that could be going into projects that you can't get off the ground because you don't have budget for them. But mate, we see numbers that exceed 15 to 30% quite regularly, depending on the type of business. MSPs in particular, we find exorbitant amounts of savings, not only for them, but their end customers as well. So they're very complex environments and they're typically managing, 100 plus vendors, which most direct customers aren't, doing in any good form or fashion. So as you can imagine as an MSP, and they run similar to any other business, they've got an accounting team, they've got an IT team, you got a CFO and a CTO that are really focusing on this stuff, but it is so complex. Without software solutions like ours, you're going to constantly be running manual sprints that are going to kill your organization and kill your business. And to be quite honest, it's going to cost you more to do this manually than to do it with a company like Procure IT. And that's where I think most people, when we showcase the service, people go, oh my gosh, this is going to cost us way too much because it provides so much value, Jeremy.
Yeah.
So for us, we've really kind of changed our strategy a little bit because we're seeing so much value from the contract portion alone of what we do. It's like, hey guys, let's just start with the contract intelligence platform. Let's pull all your contracts in and let's sit them there and let our software do some analysis around what you're doing and what we can save. It's a very easy, inexpensive way to kind of ingest and get some experience around software platforms that are out there. And to be honest, I think you could sell this for 10 times what we charge customers and they would still pay for it and think that it provides them with a significant amount of value. But we've really listened to the market. It becomes overwhelming because there's so much detail that we can get into with businesses. We start at that high level with the contract piece. We bring that in, provide them with some insights. They see those savings straight away. These are quick iterations of like, you think you've got a really good handle on this. Can we take a look under the hood? There's a no obligation free proof of concept. We do our analysis. We come back to you 10 days later and say, you've got a clean report card. Now that never happens, but we say, you've got an okay report card, or here's the areas that we've identified that there's plenty of opportunity. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's such a sound strategy.
So, yeah, every time, mate. But we see companies that we can save, sometimes 50, 60%. There's some really exorbitant, costs out there that companies aren't recognizing.
Yeah. Wow.
The quicker that they adopt, or we can get to them, then the quicker we can stop the bleeding and right size that organization. The biggest thing we hear every day is we don't have budget. We don't have budget. Let us create budget for you out of the money that you're overspending on things that you aren't using.
Yeah, it's awesome. Such a good strategy. That's actually a perfect segue. You're deeply experienced in working with organizations from mid-market right through to Fortune 500. Is the IT procurement problem fundamentally different for mid-market versus enterprise? Or do you see the same mess, but just at different scales?
The answer would be more aligned to the last thing you said there. The problem's still there, just at different scales. I think when you're talking Fortune 500, and I've had a lot of experience in the US. I spent most of my career in the US working with Fortune 500 companies. And the biggest challenge for them is there's so many siloed parts of the organization that are consuming and procuring IT outside of one centralized position. And so that becomes very messy on a large scale. And it's very hard to bring in all of the business units together to have a holistic discussion around what they're doing from an IT strategy, what they're bringing into the organization, and what they're procuring is impacting the business either positively or negatively. Because we're also self-serving, Jeremy, right? So if I need something for myself or for my team, I think that's the most important thing that we should invest in, because that's going to provide me and my team the most value at that moment. Well, if I understood the strategy of the business, my perspective might be a little different. And so my goals might change a little bit from my team needs that to, hang on a second, if we actually shifted and went with this product set, this would bring value to the whole organization. And then we've got the ability to be able to communicate cross-channel, more easily. So yeah, so that's a huge problem for Fortune 500 companies. Not dissimilar to, kind of your mid-market here in Australia and maybe SMB a little bit as well. I think the problem set's still the same. You've got duplication of SaaS products that you can't get insight into. You've got unused mobile services. You've got, fixed services that were contracted 5 years ago and no one ever looked at the contract or renewed it. So they're paying 5 times the rate they should be based on where the market's at right now. For an IT manager, they don't have this exorbitant staff where there's 30 IT people. You manage mobiles, you manage SaaS, you manage cloud, and you've got teams specifically set up to do that. They have the challenge of, we're trying to do everything. So they're wearing every hat. I'm the SaaS person. I'm the mobile phone person. We get a new employee come in, right, Jeremy? So I've got to organize you a phone, a laptop. I've got to get you, all your SaaS licenses or your business applications that you'll be utilizing, those types of things. Well, have we had employees leave that we could reutilize those services for? Or is there a different way to do it? But the IT manager doesn't have time for that. They just see it come in. That's priority. The person going out is never priority because the person's leaving. It's not like they're going to jump up and down and say, I don't have my phone day one, because they've left the organization. So it's a big challenge for them. And this is one of the crazy things that we hear in the market. The accounting team don't have time to investigate or audit the accounts against contracts because they don't have time. Their job is to just process the invoice that they get as quickly as possible. And when I hear that statement, it scares me, because when teams don't have time to actually look and interrogate the work that they're doing, I've been in those organizations and I go home every day feeling like I've done about 80% of the job that I could have done had I had the time allocated and resources allocated to be able to do a good job for the organization that I'm working for. So that's really the challenge. In both cases, they ultimately have the same problem, right? Because procurement's happening, things aren't necessarily being turned off, and over time, that leads to excessive amounts of overspend for that business.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Hey, if I'm a CEO and I'm trying to get my IT spending under control, but I don't know where to start, what would you tell me to start with?
You'd always start with your contracts. Who are we in contract with? Who are we contracted to, and for what terms and for what time and for what amount? You always want to get an understanding of the contracts. It's really just a scattergun approach when we come into particularly Australian organizations. I think there are a lot more regulation around the management of contracts in the US. And I think with CPS 230, which is legislation that's coming out here, start of July, that all businesses, financial businesses, have to have a managed contract system that allows them to have visibility into who they're doing business with, the amounts that they're paying, what they're actually contracted for, because it's becoming a bigger and bigger problem here in Australia. But if I'm a CFO or a CEO, the quickest way to get your hands around the problem set or get an understanding of what is happening in your business is to dig into those contracts. The problem with that is, as you would imagine, Jeremy, if I gave you 20 contracts in a PDF, going, oh my gosh, well, I've got 20 nights of paperwork that's going to put me to sleep every night, right? Where a company like Procure IT will do a free proof of concept for you that will upload all of those contracts for you. You see it all in a beautiful Gantt chart that's alive, that's built out for you. So now you've got full visibility overarching. Okay, we've got 13 vendors. Here are our 13 vendors. Our spend per year is $1.5 million, right? So we know exactly what our budget is. We know what we're contracted for. What is our current spend? Okay, we're actually at $1.8 million. Well, that's concerning. How come we're contracted to $1.5 million? Our budget says $1.8 million. Well, okay, these contracts are blowing well over, what we were actually contracted for. And they could be valid, right? But 9 times out of 10, they're absolutely not. So as a starting point, always focus on the contracts. It's where we start as a business always. Fortunately for us, we have a managed intelligence platform that we cheekily throw our contracts into and they come alive for us. So yeah, that's where you start 100% of the time. Because if you work backwards from that, it'll just become overwhelming and you throw your hands up in the air and say, this is too hard. We'll just keep spending and wait to see what's going to come out to help us get our hands around this.
I would assume that visibility gives you your first action item list, right? Of priorities, of savings.
Gives you a first action item priority of savings. It gives you your board reporting so that CFO and CEO can clearly go in and articulate back to the board members what is happening inside their business. And that is extremely important. And for most companies that we deal with, that's one of the biggest insights for them is that they're able to go in and articulate exactly what their budget is, what they're spending it on, and who the vendors are that they're actually contracted to. And once they actually start focusing on the vendors, that becomes a really interesting insight into, who we're contracted with. It's like, who is this company over here that's supplying our Microsoft licenses, and why aren't we getting them? Because we've got a partnership. We buy these other licenses from over here with a different vendor. Why aren't we consolidating so we can get better pricing? Because holistically, the power is in the numbers. If we've got all of our business with one vendor, holistically, our pricing is typically better because you're spending more with that one organization.
Yeah. Awesome. Fantastic, man. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah. Welcome, mate. And it was great to see you again, Jeremy. Thanks so much.
You too. All right.